The council chamber floated in the void. Between stars, a massive station. Representatives from 300 species gathered to make decisions that shape the galaxy. Today the air shimmered with tension as holographic displays showed a small blue-green world orbiting a yellow sun in the outer reaches of known space. Ambassador Thexan of the Vorkwal Collective raised 3 of his 4 arms, calling for attention. His species had led the Galactic Council for 8,000 years, and his voice carried the weight of that history. Honored delegates, we have discovered a species that requires our immediate protection. The Yavari, as our xenologists have named them, are unlike any people we have encountered in recent memory. Displays shifted, showing images of the Yavari themselves. They stood perhaps 4 feet tall, with soft, gray skin and large, gentle eyes that seemed to hold an ancient sadness. Their bodies were slight, almost fragile, with delicate 3-fingered hands that moved with careful precision. They lived in small villages built from natural materials, creating art and music that resonated with a haunting beauty. The Yavari are telepathic, Thexan continued. They share thoughts, emotions, and memories with one another. They have never known violence in their entire recorded history, spanning at least 20,000 years. They have never raised a hand against one of their own. A murmur ran through the chamber. Such a thing was almost unheard of. Even the most peaceful species had some history of conflict, some moment when survival demanded harsh choices. They are completely pacifist, added Dr. Selvik, the Vorkwal's chief xenologist. Our observation teams report that they cannot even conceive of intentionally harming another living being. The concept is so foreign to their telepathic nature that attempting to explain warfare to them causes them psychological distress. Ambassador G1 Park of Earth sat quietly in the human delegation section, her dark eyes studying the images carefully. Humanity had been granted junior membership in the Council only 15 years ago, after finally proving they could engage in galactic politics without excessive violence. The other species still watched them with cautious suspicion. We propose, Thexan declared, that the Yavari be granted protected species status at the highest level, Category 1 protection. The chamber erupted in discussion. Category 1 protection was rarely granted. It meant complete isolation from the rest of the galaxy. Military patrols enforcing a quarantine zone around their entire star system, and severe penalties for any unauthorized contact. G1 raised her hand, waiting for recognition. Thexan's eyes flickered toward her, and she could see the brief hesitation. Humans were still outsiders here, still proving themselves worthy of their place among the stars. The chair recognizes Ambassador Park of Earth, Thexan said. Finally, G1 stood, her voice calm and measured. We understand the Council's concern for the Yavari. They are clearly a gentle and unique people. However, we question whether Category 1 protection is truly in their best interest. The chamber fell silent. Several delegates turned to stare at the human delegation in surprise. Explain, Thexan said, his tone careful. Category 1 protection treats them like specimens in a museum, G1 said. It denies them any chance to grow, to change, to have meaningful contact with the broader galaxy. We propose Category 3 protection instead. allowing limited contact under supervision, giving them the chance to develop at their own pace while still being safeguarded. Your species has been in the galaxy for barely a generation, snapped Ambassador Krell of the Saxith Empire, his scales rattling with irritation. You cannot possibly understand the responsibility we bear for species less fortunate than ourselves. Perhaps that's exactly why our perspective has value. G1 replied evenly. We remember what it was like to be the newcomers, to have others making decisions about our future without our input. The debate continued for hours, but in the end the vote was overwhelming. 287 species voted for Category 1 protection. Only humanity and a handful of others dissented. The Yavari would be isolated, protected by the full might of the Galactic Council, preserved in their peaceful innocence forever. As the session ended, G1 gathered her notes and prepared to leave. Admiral Minjun Choi, the human military observer assigned to the council, approached her with a troubled expression. You did what you could, he said quietly. They made their choice, I know. G1 sighed. I just hope it's the right one. Far away on the Yavari home world, the people went about their peaceful lives, unaware of the galactic politics swirling around them. They tended their gardens, created their art, and shared their thoughts in the gentle communion of their telepathic bonds. Children played in the meadows while adults crafted intricate sculptures that captured the beauty of their world. Elder Mian sat beneath a flowering tree, his ancient mind reaching out to touch the thoughts of his people. He felt their contentment, their joy, their simple pleasure in existence. For 20,000 years, his people had lived this way, and he hoped they would continue for 20,000 more. In the darkness between stars, something else stirred. The Krellith swarm had been watching the council's deliberations with great interest. They were pirates, raiders, and slavers, caring nothing for galactic law or the supposed sanctity of protected species. They saw only opportunity. Their commander, a scarred veteran named Vexoth, studied the data his spies had gathered. A peaceful species, completely defenseless, protected only by council patrol ships that followed predictable routes and rigid engagement protocols. The Avari could be captured and sold to the highest bidder as servants, pets, or curiosities for the wealthy of a dozen different empires. Begin preparations, Vexoth ordered. We move in 3 cycles. His subordinates scattered to ready the fleet. The Krellith had learned long ago that the council was slow to act, bound by endless debates and procedures. By the time they organized a proper response, the swarm would be long gone with their prize. In the council chambers, the protection protocols were being implemented. Patrol routes were established. Warning beacons were positioned at the edge of the Avari system, and strict no-contact orders were distributed to every registered ship in the sector. G1 watched the proceedings and felt a cold knot of worry in her stomach. They were building a cage of protection around the Avari, one that looked strong but had never been truly tested. She thought of Earth's history, of all the times good intentions had led to terrible outcomes, of how protection without strength was just another word for vulnerability. I hope we're wrong about this, she murmured to Admiral Choi. So do I, he replied. The Yavari remained in their peaceful isolation, protected by laws and good intentions. While in the darkness, predators began their approach. The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson about the difference between protection on paper and protection in practice. And humanity was about to teach it. The attack came without warning during the night cycle when the Council patrol fleet was at minimum staffing. Vexoth had planned it perfectly, studying the patrol patterns for weeks, identifying every weakness in the defensive perimeter around the Yavari system. The Krelith swarm dropped out of faster-than-light travel in 12 different locations simultaneously, overwhelming the sensor networks with false signatures and jamming signals. By the time the Council ships realized what was happening, half of them were already burning, wreckage tumbling through the void. Captain Thronus of the Vorkwall Patrol cruiser Steadfast watched in horror as his tactical display lit up with hostile contacts. 3 Krelith destroyers were bearing down on his position, their weapons already charging. All ships, this is Steadfast actual. We are under attack. Repeat. The Yavari system is under attack. He slammed his hand on the communications panel. Sound the alert to Council command. We need reinforcements immediately, but the Krelith had planned for that too. Jamming fields spread across the system like a blanket, cutting off long-range communications. The distress signal would get through eventually, but it would be fragmented, delayed. By the time Council command received it and organized a response, it would be too late. The battle was brutally one-sided. The Council patrol ships were designed for law enforcement, not military combat. They had shields meant to withstand asteroid impacts and weapons capable of disabling small pirate craft. The Krelith swarm brought warships built for conquest, covered in scars from 100 previous raids. Steadfast shuddered as plasma bolts tore through her shields. Thronus gripped his command chair as the deck tilted beneath him. Return fire. All batteries, he shouted, but he already knew it was hopeless. His ship's weapons scored the armor of the nearest Krelith destroyer, but failed to penetrate. A second volley from the enemy ship smashed through Steadfast's main reactor. Abandon ship, Thronus ordered as alarms screamed throughout the vessel. He stayed at his post, manually broadcasting a final message on all frequencies, hoping someone somewhere would hear it. The Krelith swarm has breached the protection zone. They need help, someone please. The transmission ended as Steadfast exploded in a brilliant flash of light on the Yavari homeworld below. Elder Mian was the first to sense that something was wrong. The telepathic network that connected all Yavari began to ripple with confusion and fear. His people had no experience with such emotions on this scale. Then the Krelith landing craft began to descend, and the Yavari learned what terror truly meant. The raiders moved with practiced efficiency, having conducted operations like this dozens of times before. They swept through Yavari settlements with stun weapons and capture nets, rounding up the helpless inhabitants like livestock. The Yavari could not fight back, could not even conceive of fighting back. They could only flee or huddle together, their telepathic screams of distress echoing through their shared consciousness. Mian tried to comfort his people, tried to send thoughts of peace and calm through the network, but his own fear was too great. He felt every moment of terror from his people as the Kreleth dragged them toward the landing craft, felt the confusion and betrayal as they wondered why this was happening to them. The distress was so powerful that it began to bleed beyond their world, touching the minds of any telepathic or empathic species within range. Across dozens of nearby systems, sensitive individuals clutched their heads in pain, overwhelmed by the psychic tsunami of Ivari suffering. At the Galactic Council headquarters, the emergency session convened 6 hours after the first reports arrived. Ambassador Thexan stood before the assembled delegates, his usual composure shaken. "The situation is catastrophic," he announced. "The entire patrol fleet has been destroyed. The Kreleth swarm has landed on the Ivari homeworld and is conducting large-scale abduction operations. Our preliminary estimates suggest they have already captured several thousand Ivari." The chamber erupted in outrage and demands for action. But as the debate began, it quickly became clear that action would not come quickly. Vorkwil wanted to organize a proper military response, which would require assembling ships from a dozen different species. The Saxith Empire insisted on attempting diplomatic channels first, arguing that opening negotiations might save Ivari lives. "We must follow proper procedures," Ambassador Krell insisted. "If we respond with excessive force, we risk escalating this into a broader conflict. The Ivari are being enslaved right now," shouted a delegate from the Marathi cluster. "While we debate procedures, they suffer, and rushing in without a plan will only make things worse." Krell shot back. "We need to consider sanctions, trade restrictions, diplomatic pressure." Jiwon Park sat in the human delegation section, listening to the debate with growing fury. She looked at Admiral Choi, who sat rigid in his seat, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscles working. "How long?" she whispered to him. "How long for what?" He replied, though his eyes told her he already knew the question. "How long?" "Until the council actually does something." Choi glanced at the debating delegates, at the procedural motions being filed, at the committees being formed to study the situation. "Weeks," he said quietly. "Maybe months." Jiwon made her decision. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. "Ambassador Park," Dexon said, "the chair has not recognized you." "I don't care," Jiwon said flatly. She gathered her materials and looked directly at the Vorkwil ambassador. "You created Category 1 protection to safeguard the Yavari. You promised them they would be safe. You failed. Ambassador, your tone is inappropriate." "My tone?" Jiwon's voice rose. "Right now, as we sit here debating procedures and protocols, the Yavari are being dragged onto slave ships. They are terrified. They are alone. They believe the galaxy would protect them, and we are failing them with every second we waste." She turned to leave, and the entire human delegation rose with her. Admiral Choi fell into step beside her, along with Captain Sung-ho Kim and the other military observers. "Where are you going?" Dexon demanded. Jiwon paused at the exit and looked back. "To do what we should have done from the beginning. Humanity is withdrawing from this debate. We will handle this ourselves. You have no authority." Krell shouted. Any unauthorized military action will result in immediate expulsion from the council, then expel us. Choi said quietly. We'll sleep just fine. The human delegation walked out, leaving the council chamber in chaos behind them as they made their way to the docking bay where the human ships waited. G1 activated her secure communicator. This is Ambassador Park to Fleet Command, she said. Authorization code Park Delta 77 Whiskey. Initiate Operation Righteous Fury. On the other end of the line, Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of the 3rd Human Fleet, smiled grimly. We've been waiting for that order. Ambassador, the fleet is already moving. We'll be in the Yavari system in 18 hours. The council will be furious, G1 warned. Let them, Chen replied. We didn't come to the stars to file paperwork while innocents suffer. 3rd Fleet out. As the human ships prepared to jump to faster than light speed, the Yavari continued to suffer. Elder Mion dragged aboard a Kreleth slave ship, sent one final telepathic pulse into the void, a desperate cry for help that he knew might never be answered, but unknown to him, humanity had already heard, and they were coming with fire and fury. The 3rd Human Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Yavari system like an avenging hammer. 38 warships materialized in perfect formation, their weapons already charged and targeting solutions locked. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Indomitable, and surveyed the tactical display. The Kreleth had scattered their forces across the system, confident that no one would challenge them quickly enough to matter. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Communications, open a channel to all Krelly's vessels, Chen ordered. Let's give them one chance. Channel opened and Chen's voice broadcast across every Krelly's ship in the system. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Forces. You are in violation of Galactic Council protection protocols and have committed acts of violence against a peaceful species. You will immediately release all Yavari captives, power down your weapons, and prepare to be boarded. You have 60 seconds to comply. On the Krelly's command ship, Vexoth stared at the human fleet in disbelief. Where had they come from? The council couldn't possibly have organized a response this quickly. He sneered at the transmission. Humans, he spat. The council's newest puppies come to bark at their betters. He opened his own channel. This system is ours by right of conquest. Turn your ships around and leave or we will destroy you. Chen checked her chronometer. 45 seconds remaining. Did you hear me? Human, we have thousands of Yavari aboard our ships. If you attack, they will die in the crossfire. 30 seconds. Vexoth's confidence wavered slightly. The human ships were not withdrawing. If anything, they were advancing, tightening their formation in a pattern he recognized as a pre-attack maneuver. He had heard stories about humans, about their brief but violent wars with other species before joining the council, about their refusal to follow the normal rules of engagement. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. 15 seconds, Chen said calmly. All ships prepare to engage. Rules of engagement are weapons free. Precision strikes only. Protect the Yavari at all costs. Wait, Vexoth shouted. We can negotiate. We'll return half the Yavari if you Time's up, Chen said. Fire the human. Fleet opened fire with surgical precision. Their weapons had been designed after studying decades of galactic conflicts, learning from the mistakes of other species and incorporating human military doctrine that stretched back thousands of years. Each shot was calculated, targeted, measured for maximum effect with minimum collateral damage. Krellith shields flared and collapsed under the withering assault. Their weapons designed to overwhelm inferior opponents with raw firepower couldn't track the human ships as they executed combat maneuvers that would have torn apart vessels from most other species. Human crews bred in the gravity well of Earth could withstand accelerations that would kill or disable other galactic species. Within minutes, 3 Krellith destroyers were burning hulks, the rest scattered, trying to flee or regroup, but the human formation split seamlessly. Pursuit groups peeling off to chase down every enemy vessel. Launch assault teams, Chen ordered. Get our people on those slave ships. I want every Yavari recovered. Across the system, human boarding craft launch from their carriers. Small and fast ships piloted by men and women who had trained their entire lives for moments like this. They approached the Krellith vessels with controlled aggression, breaching hulls and deploying Marines in full combat armor. Sergeant Hedgen's song led her squad through the corridors of a Krellith slave transport, her weapon sweeping for targets. The Krellith guards tried to mount a defense, but they were used to fighting species that followed galactic conventions, that worried about collateral damage and proportional response. Humans didn't fight that way. Not when protecting the helpless. Song's squad moved like a single organism, covering angles and advancing with practiced precision. When they encountered a group of Krellith trying to use Yavari captives as shields, Song didn't hesitate. Her team's marksman, Private T. Young Moon, took 3 precision shots in under 2 seconds, dropping each Krellith guard without harming a single Yavari. Clear, Song shouted. Medic up. Corporal Jaihun Kang rushed forward, his medical pack already open. The Yavari huddled together, their large eyes wide with terror, their telepathic cries of distress so powerful that even the non-telepathic humans could feel a faint echo of their fear. It's okay, Kang said softly, injecting a sedative into the nearest Yavari. You're safe now. We've got you. But the Yavari didn't understand. They had never known violence before, and now they were surrounded by it, caught between their captors and these new arrivals in heavy armor carrying weapons. Their telepathic network was a storm of confusion and fear. Song knelt beside them, removing her helmet so they could see her face. She had learned about the Yavari during the briefing, learned that they responded to emotional honesty, to openness. My name is Heejin, she said gently. We came to help you. I know you're scared. I know this is overwhelming. But we will get you home. I promise. Something in her voice, in the sincerity of her emotions, cut through the telepathic chaos. The nearest Yavari, a young one barely 3 ft tall, reached out tentatively and touched Song's hand. The physical contact created a brief telepathic connection, and the Yavari gasped as they felt her emotions, anger at the Krellith, fierce protective instinct toward the Yavari, determination to see this through no matter the cost. The young Yavari turned to the others and sent a pulse through their network. The humans are friends. They came to save us. More human teams fought their way through other Kreleth ships. Captain Sung-ho Kim led a special forces unit in an assault on Vexoth's command ship, where the Kreleth commander had barricaded himself with a group of Yavari elders, including Mian. You'll kill them if you attack, Vexoth screamed over the communications channel. I have explosives rigged throughout this section. Come any closer and I'll detonate. Sung-ho studied the ship's layout on his tactical display. The Kreleth was desperate and cornered, which made him dangerous, but Sung-ho hadn't survived 3 combat deployments by taking unnecessary risks. He switched to a private channel with his demolitions expert Minseo. Can you breach from the exterior without setting off his charges? Lieutenant Choi Minseo examined the hull scans. Maybe, it'll be tight, but I think I can cut through here without triggering internal sensors. Give me 8 minutes, you have 5. Sung-ho replied, while Minseo worked. Sung-ho kept Vexoth talking, drawing his attention away from the hull. You know this is over, right? Your fleet is destroyed. Your ships are being captured. You can't escape. Maybe not, Vexoth snarled. But I can take these precious Yavari with me. The council will remember that you humans got them killed, will they? Sung-ho asked, or will they remember that you took them hostage, that you used innocent lives as shields, because you were too coward to face the consequences of your actions? The hull suddenly peeled away as Minseo completed her cutting and Sung-ho's team poured through the breach in a perfectly coordinated assault. Vexoth spun toward them, his hand reaching for the detonator, but Sung-ho was faster. A single shot from his rifle sent the device flying from the Kreleth's hand. Mission accomplished, Sung-ho reported. Hostages secure. Primary target captured. Across the system, similar scenes played out on every Kreleth vessel. Within 3 hours of the human fleet's arrival, the battle was effectively over. Kreleth ships burned or drifted helpless in space, their crews killed or captured. Every single Yavari had been recovered. Admiral Chen stood on her bridge, receiving reports from all units. 0 human fatalities. 17 wounded, non-critically. All Yavari accounted for and receiving medical care, but as she watched the last Kreleth ship surrender, she made a decision that would send shockwaves through the galaxy. She opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, well done today, but we're not finished. She paused, letting that sink in. The Kreleth fleet is attempting to scatter and escape. Under normal galactic rules of engagement, we would let them run. But I'm not interested in normal rules. I'm interested in sending a message. On several human ships, council observers who had been monitoring the battle began protesting. Admiral, the battle is over. The Yavari are safe. You cannot pursue a defeated enemy. Chen ignored them. All ships pursue and engage. No Kreleth vessel leaves this system. Not one. Let the galaxy know what happens when you hurt those under our protection. The human fleet split into pursuit formations and began the hunt. The lesson had only just begun. The Kreleth destroyer Ravager limped through space, its engines sputtering, leaving a trail of debris and coolant. Behind it, Captain Drexus had watched his fleet torn apart by the human warships and decided that survival mattered more than pride. He ordered his ship to flee at maximum speed, hoping to reach the edge of the system before the humans could catch him. He was wrong. The UES Relentless overtook Ravager, within an hour matching its course in speed with casual ease. Commander Park Yi-1 studied the damaged Krellith ship on his tactical display and opened a communications channel. Krellith vessel Ravager, this is Commander Park of the Relentless. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Drexus stared at his sensors in disbelief. The battle was over. The Yavari were safe. Why were the humans still pursuing? We are leaving the system. We are no longer a threat. You were a threat the moment you decided to attack a protected species, Park replied. You don't get to just run away and try again somewhere else. Power down your engines. This is your only warning. Drexus made the fatal mistake of trying to run. He diverted all remaining power to engines and attempted to jump to faster than light speed. The Relentless responded with a single precise shot that vaporized Ravager's jump drive. I gave you a warning, Park said quietly, then ordered his weapons officer to finish it. Similar scenes played out across the system as human ships hunted down every fleeing Krellith vessel. Those who surrendered were taken prisoner. Those who tried to fight or flee were destroyed. The humans were methodical, relentless, and absolutely unforgiving. Aboard Admiral Chen's flagship, the Council observers were in an uproar. Ambassador Pelthix of the Marathi cluster, a species known for their diplomatic nature, confronted Chen on her own bridge. Admiral, you must cease this pursuit immediately. This is a violation of every galactic convention of warfare. The enemy is retreating. The battle is won. Chen turned to face him, her expression carved from stone. Ambassador, with all due respect, your galactic conventions are exactly why the Yavari were attacked in the first place. That is absurd. We have rules of engagement to prevent excessive bloodshed. Your rules taught species like the Krellith that they can raid protected worlds, and the worst that will happen is they have to retreat and try again later. Chen interrupted. Well, we're teaching a different lesson. Today, you're teaching them to fear you, to hate you. Good. Chen said flatly. I want every pirate, slaver, and raider in this galaxy to be absolutely terrified of what will happen if they touch a species under human protection. I want them to know that if they attack the defenseless, we won't file a complaint or impose sanctions. We will hunt them down, and we will end them. Pelthix stared at her in shock. This is barbaric. No, Ambassador. Barbaric is what the Krellith did to the Yavari. This is justice. Chen turned back to her tactical display. Now, unless you plan to physically stop me, I suggest you return to your quarters and file whatever reports you need to file. We have work to finish. On the surface of the Yavari homeworld, a different kind of work was already underway. Human engineers and aid workers had deployed the moment the orbital space was secure, bringing medical supplies, temporary shelters, and reconstruction equipment. Sergeant Song walked through a Yavari settlement that had been ransacked by the Krellith, her combat armor exchanged for simple fatigues and a medic's armband. The Yavari watched her with cautious curiosity, their telepathic network slowly calming as they realized the violence had truly ended. A young Yavari approached her hesitantly. the same one who had touched her hand. During the rescue, Song knelt to be at eye level with the small being. "Hello again," she said. Softly. "How are you feeling?" The Yavari reached out and touched her hand again, and Song felt a rush of emotions through the brief telepathic contact. Gratitude, lingering fear, confusion about why anyone would help them, wonder at these strange beings who fought so fiercely, yet could be so gentle. "You saved us," the young Yavari said aloud, their voice like wind chimes. Why? Song thought about how to answer that in a way the Yavari would understand. "Because you needed help and we could give it, because leaving you to suffer would have been wrong, but you killed for us. You did violence." "Yes," Song admitted, "and it will haunt some of us for the rest of our lives. Violence always has a cost, even when it's necessary. But some things are worth that cost. Your lives are worth it." Elder Mian approached, moving slowly through the settlement. He had been one of the hostages on Vexoth's ship, had witnessed Captain Kim's team rescue them with controlled fury and precise violence. The contrast between human ferocity and human gentleness was difficult for his telepathic mind to reconcile. "I need to understand," Mian said to Song. "Your people are capable of such terrible violence, yet you use it only to protect others. How is this possible?" "What is no?" "We have Li One," Song stood, looking at the ancient being with respect. "My people learned a long time ago that the capacity for violence is just a tool. It's not good or bad by itself. What matters is why you use it and whether you can control it." She gestured to the human aid workers, helping repair damaged buildings. "We can be warriors when we need to be, but we'd rather be builders." Mian absorbed this, sharing the concept through the telepathic network. The Yavari had never conceived of violence as a tool, as something that could be controlled and directed toward good ends. To them, it was simply an evil to be avoided. The humans were teaching them a new perspective that sometimes, to protect peace, you needed the strength to defend it. In orbit, the last Krelith ship was cornered by 3 human destroyers. The ship's captain, a young Krelith named Sarox, knew she had no chance of escape. She opened a channel to the nearest human vessel. "I surrender," she said simply. Commander Lee So-young of the UES Dauntless studied the Krelith ship. Scans showed it had minimal weapons, was barely combat capable. This had probably been a support vessel dragged into the raid by Vexoth's orders. "Power down all systems and prepare to be boarded," Lee ordered, but her tone was less harsh than it had been with other Krelith ships. "If you cooperate, you'll be treated fairly." When Lee's boarding team secured the ship, they found the crew consisted largely of young, inexperienced Krelith. Many had been pressed into service, forced to join the raid against their will. Lee made a decision that would have surprised the council observers. "These aren't hardened raiders," she told Admiral Chen over a secure channel. "They're kids who got caught up in something bigger than them. Request permission to separate them from the main prisoners and offer them clemency in exchange for testimony against the raid leaders." Chen considered this. The hunt had been about sending a message, but it had also been about justice, not blind revenge. Granted, but make sure they understand. If any of them ever participate in something like this again, there won't be a second chance, the message spread quickly through the captured Kreleth. The humans would show mercy to those who deserved it, but they would be absolutely merciless to those who preyed on the innocent. It was a lesson that would be remembered. Back on the Yavari homeworld, human teachers had begun offering basic self-defense instruction to any Yavari who wanted to learn, not combat training. The Yavari would never be warriors, but simple techniques to break free from grabs, to run effectively, to recognize danger and respond to it. We're not trying to change who you are, explained Lieutenant Kang Jaiwan, demonstrating a basic escape technique to a group of curious Yavari. You're a peaceful people, and that's beautiful. But peace is easier to maintain when you have at least some ability to protect yourselves. One of the Yavari, a teacher named Sylvan, practiced the technique hesitantly. This feels wrong. We should never need to harm others. You're not harming anyone, Jaiwan corrected gently. You're just making it harder for others to harm you. There's a difference. The concept slowly took hold. The Yavari began to understand that self-defense wasn't the same as aggression, that protecting oneself didn't mean abandoning their peaceful nature. Weeks later, when the last Kreleth ship had been captured or destroyed, Admiral Chin compiled her after-action report: 0 human fatalities, 23 wounded, all recovering. Every Yavari recovered safely. Complete destruction of the Kreleth raiding fleet, and a message sent to the entire galaxy that would echo for generations. She transmitted the report to both Fleet Command and the Galactic Council, knowing the political storm that was coming. But as she watched her ships form up for the journey home, with rescued Yavari aboard being cared for by human medical staff, she knew she'd made the right choice. Protection without teeth was just a pretty lie. The Yavari had learned that the hard way. Now the rest of the galaxy would learn it too. 3 months after the battle, Ambassador G1 Park stood before the Galactic Council once again. The chamber was packed with delegates from every member species, all of them watching her with expressions ranging from anger to respect to fear. The formal censure motion had been filed by the Vorquil Collective, supported by 87 other species. Ambassador Thexan read the charges with grave formality. The Galactic Council hereby censures humanity for excessive use of military force, unauthorized military action in a protected zone, violations of established rules of engagement, and the pursuit and destruction of enemy forces that had clearly withdrawn from combat. G1 listened without expression. She had known this was coming. The human military response resulted in the complete destruction of the Kreleth raiding fleet, with an estimated 12,000 casualties. Thexan continued. While we acknowledge that your actions successfully recovered the Yavari captives, the level of force employed was grossly disproportionate to the tactical requirements. Ambassador Krell of the Saxith Empire stood, his scales gleaming under the chamber lights. The humans have shown themselves to be exactly what we feared when we granted them council membership: violent, aggressive, and unable to follow civilized rules of conduct. I move that humanity be suspended from the council for a period of no less than 20 standard years. Murmurs of agreement rippled through parts of the chamber, but Jaiwan noticed that not everyone was nodding along. Several delegations sat quietly, watching her with something that looked like understanding. When the chamber quieted, Jaiwan rose to speak. She had prepared a careful diplomatic response full of the appropriate regrets and promises to do better, but as she looked around the chamber at the same delegates who had debated and delayed while the Yavari suffered, she discarded her prepared remarks. "We are not sorry," she said simply. The chamber erupted in outrage. Thexan banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. "Ambassador Park, this council expects—" "I know what this council expects," Jaiwan interrupted. "You expect us to apologize for saving lives, to express remorse for stopping slavers, to promise that next time we'll wait patiently while you debate and form committees and file the proper paperwork, while innocent beings are dragged away to lives of suffering and servitude." She walked to the center of the chamber, her voice carrying clearly to every delegate. "We will not do that. We will never do that." Because the Yavari didn't need a committee, they didn't need a strongly worded resolution or economic sanctions. They needed someone to actually help them, and they needed it immediately. "You violated every established protocol," Krell shouted. "Your protocols failed them." G1 shot back. "You created Category 1 protection, promised them safety, and when they needed you most, all you could offer was debate and delay. Where was the Vorkwal Collective when the Kreleth landed? Where was the Saxith Empire when Yavari children were being dragged onto slave ships?" Ambassador So-Young Lee, who had been promoted to senior delegate after G1's actions, stood beside her. "The council wants to punish us for doing what you should have done. You want us to apologize for caring more about results than procedures. There must be order," Vexen insisted. "There must be rules. Without them, the galaxy descends into chaos. And without action," So-Young replied quietly, "the galaxy descends into comfortable indifference, where good intentions matter more than good results." Before the debate could continue, the chamber doors opened. A delegation of Yavari entered, led by Elder Mian. They had never attended a council session before, had never even left their home world, until humans brought them here. The sight of the small, gentle beings silenced the chamber immediately. Mian walked slowly to the speaking platform, his movements carrying the weight of his great age. He looked around at the assembled species, his large eyes taking in every delegate. "I speak for my people," he said, his soft voice amplified by the chamber systems. "We have listened to this debate, and we must offer our perspective." "Elder Mian," Vexen said carefully, "we understand you may feel gratitude toward the humans, but gratitude—" Mian's telepathic presence touched every mind in the chamber, letting them feel a fraction of what his people had experienced. "You protected us with laws, the humans protected us with action. You promised us safety, the humans gave us safety." He turned to look directly at the human delegation. "My people have been pacifists for 20,000 years. We have never understood violence, never comprehended how thinking beings could harm one another. The humans taught us something new, that sometimes violence is the only language that predators understand, but at what cost?" asked Ambassador Pelthix. "The humans killed thousands. They pursued defeated enemies. They showed no mercy. They showed perfect mercy, Mian corrected gently. They showed mercy to us, to the victims, to the helpless. They showed none to those who would prey upon the innocent. That is exactly the mercy the galaxy needs. He paused, letting that sink in, then continued. This council speaks often of civilization, of proper conduct, of following rules, but what use are rules that protect the guilty more than the innocent? What value is civilization if it cannot defend those who cannot defend themselves? The chamber was utterly silent. No one had expected this quiet rebuke from the peaceful Uvari. My people have made a decision, Mian announced. We hereby request that the Galactic Council remove the Category 1 protection designation from our world. Shocked gasps echoed through the chamber. Furthermore, Mian continued, we formally request that humanity be granted responsibility for our protection and security. We trust them to keep us safe in a way that we no longer trust this council. Thexan looked stunned. Elder Mayan, surely you don't mean I mean exactly what I say. Mayan replied firmly. And we are not alone in this sentiment. The chamber doors opened again, and 16 more delegations entered. Representatives from every Category 1 protected species in the galaxy. They had all been following the Yavari situation closely. They had all seen what happened when the Council's protection failed and what happened when humanity stepped in. One by one they made the same request. They wanted human protection over the following hours. The political landscape of the galaxy shifted. The Council couldn't afford to lose oversight of 17 protected species. After intense negotiations, a compromise was reached. Humanity would be integrated into the Council's protection fleet as a semi-autonomous force, operating under their own rules of engagement but coordinating with Council oversight. It was less than the Council wanted and more than humanity had expected, but it was a recognition that their approach, for all its violence, had achieved something the Council's procedures had not: actual protection. 6 months later, Admiral Chen stood on the surface of the Yavari homeworld, attending the dedication of a new monument in the central settlement. The Yavari had spent months crafting it, pouring their artistic talents into creating something that would honor what had happened. The monument showed a human and a Yavari standing side by side, the human's hand resting protectively on the Yavari's shoulder. The base was inscribed in both languages. True protection is not a promise. It is a presence. Elder Mayan stood beside Chen, his aged mind still sharp and clear. You changed us, he said quietly. We are still a peaceful people, but we are no longer naive. We understand now that peace must sometimes be defended. I hope we didn't take too much from you, Chen replied, thinking of the Yavari's gentle nature, worried that exposure to violence might have damaged something precious. You took nothing, Miana assured her. You gave us something we lacked: the knowledge that good beings will stand against evil when necessary. You reminded the galaxy of something it had forgotten. What's that? That civilization is not measured by how well you follow rules in times of peace. It is measured by what you are willing to do when the innocent suffer. Chen looked at the monument, at the image of human and Yavari together across the galaxy on 16 other protected worlds. Similar monuments were being built. Humanity had earned something rare and precious, not just respect but trust. The Council had tried to protect these species with laws and protocols, with procedures and proper forms. They had built walls of rules and hoped they would be enough, but humanity had taught a different lesson, one that was spreading across the galaxy. Like ripples in a pond, protection without strength is just hope. Laws without enforcement are just words. And sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be absolutely committed to defending it with every resource at your disposal, with complete dedication, with the willingness to do whatever is necessary to keep the innocent safe. In the council chambers, the debates continued about proper use of force, about proportional response, about following established procedures. But in the protected zones across the galaxy, there was a new presence. Human ships patrolled the borders. Human soldiers trained local forces. Human diplomats worked to resolve conflicts before they turned violent. And everyone from the smallest settlement to the largest empire knew one thing with absolute certainty: if you attacked a protected species, if you preyed upon the helpless, if you ignored the warnings and violated the sanctity of the innocent, humanity would come for you. Not in months, not after debates and committees and proper procedures. They would come immediately, with overwhelming force, with absolute commitment. And they would not stop until justice was done. That was the final lesson humanity taught the galaxy. Not that might makes right, but that the right must have might behind it. Not that violence solves all problems, but that refusing to use violence when necessary solves none. The Galactic Council had tried to protect the Uvari with promises and procedures. Humanity had protected them with action and commitment. In the end, the galaxy learned which kind of protection actually mattered, and they learned it from a species that had walked among the stars for barely generation, but understood something that ancient civilizations had forgotten: that the measure of a civilization is not found in its laws, but in its willingness to enforce them when the innocent cry out for help. The humans called it responsibility. The Uvari called it salvation. The Council called it excessive. History would call it necessary. Ambassador Park stood with Admiral Chen at the monument. Dedication, watching as Uvari children played nearby, children who would grow up free because someone had been willing to fight for them. She thought about the censure motion, about the political battles ahead, about the species who still questioned humanity's methods. Let them question, she thought. Let them debate and analyze and critique. We'll be too busy actually protecting people to care. Beside her, Admiral Chen smiled as if reading her thoughts. Jiwen looked at the monument one last time, at the words carved into its base. True protection is not a promise. It is a presence. Yes, she said. We have 17 systems to watch over now. Let's make sure they never need to build monuments to remember being saved. They walked away together as the sun set on the Yavari home world, their shadows stretching long across the peaceful settlement. Behind them, human and Yavari worked side by side, building a future where protection meant more than paperwork, where safety was guaranteed not by laws alone but by the unwavering commitment of those strong enough to defend the weak. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Now it was time to build something better,